Welcome to the Build a Life After Loss podcast, uplifting support for your grief and healing journey. We're here to encourage your hope in the future and strengthen your confidence so that you can build a life of purpose and joy. I'm your host, Julie Clough. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 84, the model for healing. Well, I bet you're wondering what that's all about. I would be too. I have spent the past 20 plus years discovering and refining what causes our pain and grief, how to allow our grief to heal us, and what effort is required of us to claim healing. And as I've talked about before, some of the prerequisites are hope, that we build our hope for the future and for a better day, and a desire to take the action, because it takes effort. Those are the prerequisites of doing this work. But anyone can claim healing. We can all claim healing. And on the Facebook page recently, I posted a post about these 5 concepts, these 5 things, the building blocks, the framework, the model for healing. And often I see people trying to go from or just taking 2 of them and trying to make it work. Just taking a portion of it and it doesn't work, and then they make it mean something about them. They make it mean that there's something wrong with them. And see, I can't heal. It's not possible. It's not available to me. But really, it's just that you just don't have the information. You just don't have the tools. That's all it is. And so that's why I'm here, because when you don't have the tools, when you don't have the information, when you don't have the support to move through this, it is very easy to assume there is something wrong with you. Very easy. And to think that there is no hope. But if you can hold on to a little bit of hope, and if you can hold on to a desire for a better day, and if you can use your faith in a higher power to support you, and you can continue to do the work and to search and to, I just hope you're here every week and listening to these messages. And as I've mentioned to you before, like, I work with people one-on-one and I walk them through step by step and we personalize it for them. But I wanted to share with you this framework that when we do this work, that it does help us move from the pain of grief, because the problem isn't grief. The problem is the way we think and how we feel about grief. And we make grief mean there's something wrong with us. And I know I've said that a couple of times already, but I want you to hear there is nothing wrong with you if you are grieving. And even if it's been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you're still grieving, it's just that you just haven't known. You haven't had the tools. You haven't known how to walk from here to there. You haven't found the path. You haven't seen the path. And so I want to show you just a framework, just an outline of the path to healing. The first thing is coping. We have to learn how to cope with grief in a constructive way instead of in destructive ways. And I've done other episodes about the things that we do to numb our pain instead of facing our pain. And the ways that we numb our pain aren't all bad. Like right now during the pandemic, you're probably doing a lot of coping. And there's things that you're doing that you're probably like, should I be sleeping so long in the morning? Should I be watching so much TV? If you're having those thoughts, then maybe it's time to look for other ways to cope. Maybe it's also time to forgive yourself. I want to do a whole episode on forgiving ourselves, but we'll talk about that later. But how, in coping, we have to learn to be patient. We have to learn to be patient and curious, because we can't bully ourselves out of grief. We have to learn about emotions. I'm guessing that if you're listening to this right now, you probably have never received any education on emotions and feelings and how to deal with them. So then when something happens, bad happens, like this pandemic that's affecting everybody and everything, the emotions are heavy and we don't know how to feel our feelings. We don't know how to understand what's going on. We have to learn how to feel our emotions and what to do with them and understand where they come from on a deeper level and how to hold on to that hope for better days ahead. The second phase of healing is understanding. If you go into grief, chances are, unless you've experienced grief before, you have little understanding of grief. And even when we've experienced grief over and over and over again, we make assumptions about our grief. We take the grief that we've experienced before and we make it mean something. And it's not always accurate, but grief affects our body, it affects our mind, it affects our spirit. Obviously, it affects our emotions in a big way. We need to understand the vibrational quality of grief and why we experience grief and how grief can lead us down the path to healing. And we must understand that grief is a season. It's a season for healing. And understand what healing is and why it's important to us. So that's the piece. We've got to do some bit of learning about grief, what it is, what it isn't, and how to deal with it. That's the next piece. The third piece is discovering. Now, what is discovering? Discovering has to do specifically about your experience. Your losses, your experience. Because like I've talked about before, when we feel that boulder of grief that lands on us and consumes our life and changes our life, we see it as one big giant event. And we refer to it as the divorce, the death, the diagnosis, the firing, the breakup. We refer to it as this event, but within that event are so many regrets, so many things that we hoped for that aren't going to happen. There's so many expectations that were not met. And we got to go in there and discover the things, the pieces, the pebbles, like I talk about the boulder of grief and how we break that boulder of grief into pebbles and sand and bits and pieces that we break away. But we have to identify those things that are causing our pain, not just the one big loss, but the components of our specific unresolved feelings. We discover the depth of our loss and the implications of it and what we've made it mean. And we go through this discovery process, this identification process. The fourth thing is resolving. Once we've discovered those things that are really underlying all of our pain, then we get to work on resolving the conflict in our emotions so we can work towards letting go of the pain. Always remembering that letting go of the pain, if we're letting go of the pain of losing someone we love, we are never letting go of the person. We are letting go of the pain of the loss. It's a totally different thing. And as long as we continue to combine those things, you'll never be able to let go of the pain because your brain signals that, if you let go of the pain, you're letting go of the person. Two different things. And that's part of the resolution process. We learn to separate our pain from the person and the thing we lost. And if you've gone through something difficult where you feel like you've been victimized, where someone's been cruel, where someone's been cheated you or created some other pain for you, you're not letting go of a person you love in that case. You're letting go of the hurt that person caused so that you can let go of their hold on you. Because as long as you keep the pain that they inflicted, and all of this is not, these are seasons, these are steps that happen over, we're not talking about days. These are milestones in the process. Milestones in the process of rebuilding. But if you've been victimized, if you've gone through something painful, then you're letting go of the pain. You're not condoning what they've done. Two separate things. So that's part of the resolving process. And then the last thing is rebuilding. Because we're not just leaving the pain behind. And I talked a little bit about this in the episode a couple of weeks ago when I talked about that process of moving forward and the push energy versus the pull energy. We want to start creating some pull energy. So you learn to create a vision for your future. You define what you're moving toward, what you're interested in, not just the pain you're moving away from, but what gives you joy. How do you identify your purpose? And while we're talking about purpose for just a second, let me just say that purpose does not mean sometimes we make this so heavy. And we make it like, oh, I've got to wait until my mission in life falls out of the sky and lands in front of me completely outlined with step-by-step instructions. And I'm going to tell you that never happens. It never happens. We find our purpose through finding the purpose for this month. And finding the purpose for this week, and finding the purpose for 3 months. And we step by step work to a place where we're like, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is how I want to show up. This is who I want to be. And it's not I don't know how to explain it any better than that it's just never going to just drop out of the sky. It just doesn't happen that way. But we can feel purpose in our day-to-day life, even without having the script in front of us that has fallen out of heaven. So that's kind of the next piece, is really rediscovering your joy and your purpose. And this is the framework. This is the model. These are the steps that I take my clients through. And I just wanted you to be aware of kind of the framework. And so often we want to go from coping and not even really learning how to cope well. Like what do we do to cope? How do we cope in a way that helps us rather than harm us more? Because some coping can look like drugs or overuse of alcohol, things that truly harm us and are destructive. But a lot of times people want to go from coping to rebuilding, and they don't do any of that process in the middle. And then they're discouraged because the rebuilding is not happening. And it's not happening because they lack understanding of what needs to come in between. And so then when the rebuilding doesn't happen, they give up. They give up and they say, well, see, I can't heal. It's not possible. But it's just a lack of good information. It's a lack of good understanding. That's all it is. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just figuring out the steps and the things that you need to do. And in the next few weeks, I'll be exploring each one of these steps in greater detail. Some of these steps I have talked about in previous podcasts, and some of them I've talked a lot about. But those that I want to explore more. But I hope that you can see in the framework and the things that I talked about on the podcast and how it fits into that framework. And maybe you can see where you are on your journey. Have you learned how to cope in a constructive way? Are you learning about grief? If you've been here for a little while, then I've been teaching you a lot about grief and how it works. And if you join our workshop, which is coming up on June 2nd, if you join that workshop, I go into a lot more detail that really helps you to understand and even helps you in these other areas of coping and discovering. These are the things that we do in the workshop. So I hope that you will join us. We have a promo code right now. It was only $5 instead of $27. So if you go to the bit.ly link, it's in the show notes, but it's bit.ly/BLAL June. Then that's June with a capital J. So everything else is lowercase. June is uppercase. Again, it's in the show notes, and the promo code is special02. So go there, register for that. You'll be able to ask questions. It is a workshop, so I'm going to be walking you through things. We'll go into much more depth on all of this, and I'll be able to demonstrate it for you and show you. And I hope that you'll come. I hope that you will join us. It is completely private. So if you don't want to add comments to the chat, or you don't have to. You could just sit back and watch. So anyway, love you guys. I believe in you. I truly do. I believe in you because I have lived this and I know it's possible. And so I believe in you and I believe in your power to heal. Love you. Bye.